Hello, and welcome to the Midwestern Geek in Cali YouTube channel. On the last day of 2018, this is my New Year's Eve special, my first annual New Year's Eve special. I'm hoping to do one every year. And of course, this is tea, Earl Grey hot. And here I am YouTubing from 42 TARDIS Way, Summer's winter home in lovely Temecula, California. And while we're here looking at the infinity screen, I'm going to let you know a little bit about what this episode is going to cover. This is my Happy New Year farewell to 2018 and all those we lost, and Dan's predictions, Dan's Geek Predictions for 2019. So I'm going to start with those who've passed first, and let's get off the infinity screen. So here we are. Now, briefly, I'm at www.midwesterngeekincali.com. Yes, that lands on a blogger blog. Only an old geek would know what a blogger blog is these days, I think. But also, if you're so inclined, please stop by and donate. Also, as you can see from my Christmas episode here, I bring in lots of things on the blog that you can't just get straight out of the YouTube channel. Things like show notes, links that I'm referring to in the show. If I read poetry, I may post it here. All those kind of things. And then let's talk a little bit about why I might actually have a clue about what I'm talking about when it comes to the predictions that I'm making. A clue, mind you, this is my best educated guess, but I am a little bit educated, and if you stop by, you can stop in and see some of my certifications. This is a short list. I've got a long list of certifications and classes that I've taken, but right now these are the major ones. I'm a Microsoft Certified Solutions Associate, which we'll see here in a second. And not only that, but as you can see, I've got my browser loaded up with tabs. It is very full right now. It's going to take a minute to fully load the site. This is my Linux machine that I'm running off of. My Windows machine has a little bit of a flaky hard drive, and it likes to give me a blue screen of death every now and then. And I didn't want it doing that during this show. So I'm running on my Linux machine, which only has 4 gigs of RAM, which for Linux, that's usually pretty good, but I've got an awful lot of browser tabs open here. So I have a lot to show you today. I also am certified PC and Client Pro. My Microsoft certifications are for Windows 10 client. I am currently studying Microsoft certifications for Windows Server. I have a CompTIA A+ and Test Out PC Pro. Also, as a member of Civil Air Patrol, I've gotten a couple of FEMA classes done for emergency management in order to help me respond in an emergency situation. I am a volunteer with Civil Air Patrol, and I'll tell you a little bit more about Civil Air Patrol here shortly. Civil Air Patrol has 3 missions, and one of them is training cadets. Similar to ROTC, I'm currently a second lieutenant in Civil Air Patrol. I've been in for a little over 1 year. I volunteered on my own, and you actually have to pay to volunteer for Civil Air Patrol. It's kind of interesting, but there are 3 missions. They train cadets very similar to ROTC, and it's geared specifically towards the Air Force. Civil Air Patrol is actually an auxiliary to the United States Air Force, but it's all volunteer. No one's paid or anything, and it also is a 501c3 charity. So I definitely would encourage you to donate to Civil Air Patrol. It is tax deductible. You can donate to the national organization, but better by far would be to find your local squadron, the nearest squadron to you, and donate to that unit. The smaller regional units do the real work of the Civil Air Patrol, and they have, more difficulties in raising funds, and probably less awareness than Civil Air Patrol National. I would strongly urge you to find your regional Civil Air Patrol unit and donate to them. And here's a very good reason why. Civil Air Patrol, their second mission, and these are not in order of priority, mind you, they're just in the order I'm talking about them. Their second mission is what's called emergency services. So Civil Air Patrol Emergency Services, 95% of all civil aviation search and rescue operations, both ground and air, are conducted by Civil Air Patrol. Civil Air Patrol has the largest private fleet of aircraft in the United States, probably in the world for that matter, and that when a plane goes missing off a radar, doesn't show up according to flight plan, an emergency locator beacon goes off, etc., Civil Air Patrol sends out aircraft and people on the ground to search the flight path of that aircraft and help locate it. They also do aerial photo surveys after disasters. For instance, 30 squadrons were activated from around the country after Hurricane Harvey hit Houston in order to help assist the Federal Emergency Management Agency with determining which homeowners needed disaster assistance and relief, where the worst of the flooding is, where the damage is, infrastructure damage, and damage to people's homes. This helps people get disaster relief funds to rebuild after a disaster. And so Civil Air Patrol has a lot to do with that. They also may do emergency medical evacuations and also communications in the event of the loss of commercial communications network. They can support communications across country and stuff and within a regional area in order to help people recover from a disaster. That's their job. That's what people in Civil Air Patrol volunteer to do. And that's really the function that drew me to them. I actually learned just a few days ago that a fellow that I've been helping with computers for a year or two now, his life was actually saved by Civil Air Patrol in Alaska. He's a retired architect, and he flew out to do a survey for a job in Alaska, and the pilot ran the plane out of gas, and they were out in the wilderness in the tundra with the mosquitoes up there for 3 days, and Civil Air Patrol are the ones that found them. So that's the kind of thing Civil Air Patrol does. Another thing that Civil Air Patrol does is aerospace education, both for members and the general public. And I've achieved the basic certification for aerospace education. In other words, I've taken the basic classes and read the basic book on it. And I, know a lot of the history of general aviation and aviation in general as well. So that's one of the things that Civil Air Patrol does for me. Now, I have a long history with that kind of thing. In the early 1990s, actually 1993, I got a vocational diploma in aircraft electronics. So I've been geeking for a long time. And also, in 1992, as part of my schooling for aircraft electronics, I received a FCC lifetime general radio telephone operator's license with ship radar endorsement. I also received a certification from Level 3 Communications for 20 years of service as a field technician in downtown Chicago. So I did long distance telecommunications, large data centers, small co-location points, customer telephone equipment rooms all over the states of Wisconsin and Illinois, fiber repeater huts in Illinois, Indiana, and Wisconsin. You know, all kinds of things along those lines. And prior to that, I spent about 10 years doing all kinds of odd jobs all over the Midwest, Great Lakes region of the Midwest, for those of you out here in California. And also things like apartment maintenance, that kind of thing. And when I was 17 years old, I joined the Air Force 2 weeks after my 17th birthday. Yes, you can do that. Your parents have to sign off on it, and you need to have good enough test scores for the Air Force to be willing to take you. But it is doable, and I went in at 17 years old, and I became an aircraft radar technician back in 1980 for the United States Air Force, so I'm an Air Force veteran as well. And so I've also been following technology and science magazines ever since I was about 10 years old, and sci-fi and comic books since I was about 4 years old. I started off with Marvel Comics. I watched the Apollo moon landings in summer school in 1970. And I've just been fascinated with science and technology and gadgets and science fiction and big picture ideas when it comes to science and tech for pretty much my entire life, since childhood. And I've actually accomplished quite a bit along those lines. So, yeah, no, I'm not just pulling it out of my, so I might have a clue. I could be wrong. My current position, I'm an IT instructor to adult veterans, and I'm not going to mention the school right now. It's really not my place to do that on this program, but it's a small private college, and I do teach IT to veterans, and I'm also studying advanced IT classes. So that's me. That's my geek cred in a nutshell, as quickly as I can explain it. And that's why my predictions might have a little bit of weight. These are some of the stories that I've been paying attention to. I don't think the stories that I'm going to be bringing to you along those lines are going to come to full fruit this year. We'll get into the predictions part of that later. But the next thing to go on with is I want to get into this first. And this is why, and I'm going to probably close each of these tabs as I show you what I'm going to be talking about here. So let's take a sip off this Star Trek tea here and dive in. So of course we lost Stan Lee this year, and I'm noting that Wikipedia has been asking hard for help. I think they're a good resource. I'm planning on donating to Wikipedia myself soon. I can't really afford to do it right yet, but I will be by the end of this month because Wikipedia is extremely valuable. But Stan Lee created Spider-Man. He was huge with Marvel Comics. He had a lot to do with the comic books that I read as a kid and a young adult, and even into my adult years, and all the movies. Of course, people know him from the cameos in the movies, but really he had an awful lot to do with the comic books that a lot of us geeks grew up to love. Marvel Comics. And I also want to show him as I recall him being from my childhood. This is Stan Lee around 1975. That's the Stan Lee I first heard about when I first started really getting into comic books seriously as a teenager in high school. I mean, I had a lot of comics and stuff when I was a much younger kid, but when I got into high school, I really dived into it a lot more. And of course, young adulthood, I had to start working and being responsible. I didn't have as much time for it, so I couldn't keep up with it. But Stan Lee, he'll be sorely missed, and I'm probably spending more time talking about that one passing away than most of the other ones I'm going to be talking about. We also lost Paul Allen this year. Paul Allen was an Apollo astronaut. Remember, I told you I watched the first moon landing when I was in summer school because it happened in July. And Paul Allen was an Apollo astronaut. That's a huge loss this year. And there will be links to all these pages, so don't worry, you'll be able to go back and look at it more in depth if you're so inclined. We also lost John Young this year, who was another Apollo astronaut, and I believe he was the 4th person to walk on the moon. Nope, 9th, sorry. But he was a moonwalker. I think both of them were. And one of them also flew a space shuttle, but another loss to our space history. And then also Alan Bean. I might have been wrong on Paul Allen one. I think I gave you the wrong scoop on that. Sorry, my mistake. Alan Bean was definitely an Apollo astronaut, 4th person to walk on the moon. This is the astronaut that I was thinking of. And another great loss to space exploration. And we'll remember these guys forever. New York Times has a lot of notable deaths in science and technology. People we lost this year. There'll be a link there. This gal here, I'm doing this without my glasses, and it's really just killing me as soon as the text gets small. Sorry about the glare, but I have to do it. Ray Montague, 83 years old, the Navy's hidden figure of ship design. In other words, this gal was kind of behind the scenes, but doing ship design for the Navy. Dorothy Cheney revealed primate's complexity. Paul Allen, oh my God, how could I not remember that one? I am so sorry. Co-founder of Microsoft, duh. You guys were probably laughing in the background as I was saying that about NASA and Paul Allen. Oops. Well, if it's not a little small YouTube channel, I guess bloopers might be a little less common, or somebody in the background might be telling me, whoa, you're talking about the wrong thing. You know, Paul Allen was, wow. He was a big one in bringing the personal computer to everyone. I don't think if Paul Allen had been around, things would be anywhere near like what they are today. So just want to give Paul Allen his actual due. Not an astronaut, definitely exploring information space. Big time. And there's quite a few others here that were important in science. Charles Cow, Nobel laureate in fiber optics. That's a huge contribution to current information technology. And then I'm going to move on. CNET has a nice video tutorial on a lot of the technology that died in 2018. I'm not going to get into specifics here, but It's a good slideshow, and a lot of interesting things have gone by the wayside. And some of them are just gadgets, others are social media platforms that went out with 2018. But I encourage you to stop by MidwesternGeekandCali.com, hit this episode once I get it posted, and come over to this link and take a look at some of the tech that went away this year. And one of the notables for me is GeoCities. I had thought GeoCities was gone back circa 2008, 2009. I know there's a site called riocities.com that archived a lot of the GeoCities websites that people had created. In particular, a friend of mine from Australia had a website on there, and that one is on riocities.com. It was archived there, and you can still go and check it out. However, GeoCities was still around in Japan apparently, and that's kind of interesting to me. But if you come over and check out the slideshow, you'll find out quite a bit along those lines. So, tech that passed away. All right. And of course, how could we talk about Stan Lee and not talk about all the Marvel characters that vanished in Infinity War? They vanished without a trace, of nothing but dust in 2018. And wow, I'm wondering how they're going to come around that one. Taking a break for a minute here while this thing closes out and loads. All right, some science fiction greats that we lost this year, and this is one. This section right here is one you probably won't see on other farewells and goodbyes for 2018, but it's one I think that on this show needs to be done every year. And we have some notable passings this year. Larry Harvey was the guy who invented Burning Man. He was 70 years old, and he, Burning Man, that's pretty huge in Geekland in a way. So, goodbye, Larry Harvey. Tim O'Connor, who was a star on Peyton Place, but also way back, and I watched a lot of these as a kid, he starred in Buck Rogers. I mean, way back, the old black and white Buck Rogers TV show, which was like some of the earliest sci-fi TV series around. Tim O'Connor, thank you for your work on Buck Rogers, and goodbye in 2018. Robert Dowdle, who played Chip Morton on Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. I don't know how many of you were kids in the 60s and watched Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, but it was a sci-fi submarine that had a breakaway flying submarine that could dispatch from the full-size submarine and go flying around to do rescues and all kinds of stuff. So Robert, goodbye to you as well in 2018. Deanna Lund, who starred on the series Land of the Lost, passed away this year. She also played in Land of the Giants. So, goodbye, Deanna, in 2018. Michael Anderson. He created films such as The Dam Busters, and more notably for science fiction geeks, Logan's Run. He was the director on Logan's Run. So thank you, Michael Anderson, and goodbye in 2018. Harlan Ellison, science fiction author, wrote quite a few books, and I read a lot of Harlan Ellison science fiction novels when I was a teenager in the 20s, and he's not one of the top 3 grandmasters. That would be Isaac Asimov. Arthur C. Clarke, and Robert Heinlein, but Harlan Ellison definitely would have been in my top 10 or top 20 sci-fi authors of the 20th century. So Harlan, thank you for all the wonderful stories, and goodbye in 2018. Ursula K. Le Guin. Ursula K. Le Guin wrote all kinds of science fiction and fantasy books. I've read many of Ursula's books. She's a huge sci-fi and fantasy author in the 20th century. And thank you, Ursula, for all the wonderful stories. And goodbye in 2018. So, let's stop over and take care of some of the predictions here. All of these predictions are in the show notes over at MidwesternGeekandCali.com. I wanted to bring them up here on their own. One story that I've talked about a good little bit here throughout 2018. I think it's going to be an ongoing story. 2 seconds here. Okay. Multiple companies will launch low Earth orbit broadband internet satellites by the end of the year, and SpaceX will lead. That's what I'm predicting. That SpaceX will be the first one to actually get broadband internet service up and running. I could be wrong about that. Richard Branson's involved in one too, but I'm thinking it's going to be SpaceX. They've already launched one test satellite, and they're going to start launching in earnest in 2019. These satellites are not like your traditional satellites. They're not 22,500 miles up in geosynchronous orbit, so that one satellite is constantly over the same point on Earth as it spins. No, these are in low Earth orbit, about 150 to 180 miles up, which means that instead of having to go 100,000 miles round trip, it's going to have to go about 600 miles round trip for data to get to and from the satellite and replies to come back. We are talking the advent of cheap gigabit Ethernet internet service via satellite worldwide, anywhere on the planet. South Pole, North Pole, Antarctica, Australia, US, Canada, Greenland, Iceland, Africa, Middle East, Europe, Russia, China, Japan, Asia, all of it. The entire planet, middle of the ocean, in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, tiny islands everywhere, Atlantic Ocean, it doesn't matter. Once these constellations or satellites are up, you'll be able to get broadband internet service anywhere on the planet for pretty much $7 to $10 a month is what they're estimating. And they say 7, I'm thinking 10 because think a little higher. Okay, I think that is going to be huge, and I think it's going to begin in 2019, and I think within 10 years, by 2029, it will be in full effect and huge, very huge. Mobile 5G technology will begin rolling out in earnest, and by the end of the year, large metro markets will have some coverage and even a few phones that can use it. The phone manufacturers have been slow to roll those out. To be honest, I'm still running Galaxy S7. I do not want to get a new phone until I can get a 5G capable phone. So it's probably going to be 2020 unless my phone actually croaks. I'm not getting a new phone until 2020. Probably middle of the year after 5G has really been able to roll out. All right. Next prediction. Cable internet provider companies will be talking about major rate reductions and trying to sugarcoat crappy customer service by the end of the year due to the above two stories. The level of despicableness that they have maintained for so long will see people eagerly awaiting leaving them for satellite and mobile competitors, but the competing networks will need about 2 additional years to really begin replacing cable internet in earnest. I think that they're going to get another couple of years out of us. They're going to squeeze a little more blood out of us poor turnips, but they're going to have to start reducing rates and such to compete, or they're going to have to go to all commercial high reliability networks. In any case, things are going to be very tough for the cable internet providers and traditional telecom providers that have been trying to provide internet service to the home. I think that this is going to be as big as the change from dial-up to broadband. I think satellite internet and 5G combined connectivity is going to be everywhere, and it's probably going to be bigger than the change from dial-up to broadband, to be honest. I think it's going to be so much better as far as internet usage and ability to access things on the internet. I just think it's going to be amazing. That being said, it's really going to take another 5 to 10 years before that